New footage of NBA YoungBoy just dropped, and it's already shaking the internet to its core. In the clip, fans claim they saw YB smack Lil Tim mid-performance after a fan threw something on stage. Yeah, that Lil Tim, the same man tied to King Von's death back in 2020. Now, the streets are buzzing with one question: was YB just losing his temper, or did he just publicly check his own shooter in front of thousands? Let's break down what really went down. The viral video starts like any other internet moment. Shaky phone footage, fans screaming, and chaos erupting in real time. But this one hit different. You can clearly see NBA YoungBoy standing center stage, mic in hand, when an object flies out of the crowd. A split second later, YB turns around toward Lil Tim, and according to what viewers swear they saw, he smacks him. Within minutes, the video blew up across social media. Clips hit X, TikTok, and YouTube instantly, with captions like, "Ain't no way YB just checked his own shooter," flooding timelines. Others called it fake or edited, claiming it might have been stage lighting or camera angle trickery. But the reason this clip hit so hard isn't just the alleged slap, it's who it involved. Lil Tim has been one of the most polarizing figures in hip-hop ever since the fatal Atlanta shooting outside Monaco Hookah Lounge that killed King Von. To some, he's a street soldier who acted in self-defense. To others, especially Von's fans and Lil Durk's OTF circle, he's the man responsible for one of the most heartbreaking losses in modern rap history. So if NBA YoungBoy, the man who stood behind Tim for years, really laid hands on him, that's not just a random outburst. That's symbolic power. It's YB reminding everyone that he runs the story now. And that's why the internet can't stop talking. To casual fans, this might look like a split-second meltdown caught on camera. But for those who've been following this blood-soaked saga between YoungBoy's camp and King Von's legacy, the implications are heavy. The 2020 shooting didn't just end a life. It ignited a cultural war that's still claiming careers, freedom, and maybe even friendships. If the footage is authentic, YB might have just drawn a new line in the sand, proving dominance not just over his enemies, but over his own team. Because in this game, control is everything. And after years of silence, NBA YoungBoy might have just reminded the world who's really calling the shots.
Well, you pull out and you shoot 4 times.
Yeah, the gun jam.
That single jam, that one chaotic moment in Atlanta, might have been the pause between life and death for more than one man. When the first shot rang out, it wasn't just chaos, it was destiny unfolding. Bullets ripped through the air, off-duty cops returned fire, and in the middle of it all, Lil Tim caught 2 bullets, one in the hip, one in the backside. Even bleeding out on the pavement, Tim later said his mind stayed ice cold.
I knew, like, do the same thing, like stay calm and just make sure I get to the hospital.
That coldness, that calm in carnage, became his defining trait. It's what turned him into one of the most infamous names in modern hip-hop. And it's the same composure that made the viral slap footage between him and NBA YoungBoy hit the internet like a bomb. Because after King Von's death, the streets went eerily silent. Nobody wanted to speak first, not Durk, not OTF, until YoungBoy came home. When he got out of jail, it wasn't the same YB the world remembered. The man who once rapped about chaos now moved with surgical calculation. He'd been through federal cases, mental battles, and industry blackballing. He didn't just come back angry, he came back strategic. Every lyric, every post, every subliminal diss felt like it was written in red ink, a mix of pain, paranoia, and power. So when YoungBoy and Quando Rondo dropped their collab tape, 3860, fans instantly knew this wasn't just music, it was retaliation wrapped in bass lines. On one track, Quando practically immortalized the night Von died, rapping details that made listeners feel like they were right there in that parking lot. To Von's people, it was disrespect. To YB's fans, it was testimony.
Then I'll be damned, it really happened. Our rapper got killed. It broke my heart seeing my N-word get hit up with that steel.
But behind the scenes, things weren't as united as they looked. Word spread that YB didn't even want to release the project at first. In a Vlad TV interview, Lil Tim admitted that it was actually Quando who pushed YB to drop it, while YoungBoy wanted to wait, maybe even distance himself from the entire situation.
Yeah, it's like he ain't wanted to say, I don't know like 100% everything, but I know he wasn't saying like he didn't want to just drop the tape, like I don't want to drop this with you. He was saying like, let's wait.
That line hits completely different now that the new smack footage is out. Because if that's true, this wasn't just a random act of frustration. It was years of buried tension exploding in one public moment. YoungBoy didn't just hit anybody. He allegedly hit the man who shot the bullet that changed hip-hop forever. The man who made him untouchable to his enemies and toxic to the industry at the same time. So now everyone's asking, what changed? Some fans think YB's patience finally cracked. That after years of disses from Lil Durk's camp, the constant street pressure, and living under FBI eyes, he finally snapped. Others think this was a calculated move, YB showing dominance, even over his own circle. Either way, that slap, real or not, just reignited the fire in one of rap's most dangerous rivalries. Remember when NBA YoungBoy went live that one time? The clip where he lost it for a few seconds and let the whole world know exactly how he felt? Interview?
I'm dropping the tape at 12. Guy out. Shit, just tell a nigga catch up with me.
Yeah, that wasn't just some random tantrum or social media meltdown. That was a declaration of war, an unfiltered moment that reminded everyone what kind of energy fuels this entire saga. And almost instantly, Lil Durk fired back with a bar that would echo for years. When your homies die, you never slide. It ain't adding up. That single line reignited everything. The beef, the comparisons, the obsession with who really slid. Suddenly, fans were keeping score like this was a championship series, counting bodies like trophies, arguing over who really runs the streets. And in the middle of all that chaos sat YoungBoy, perched at the top of the game, being poked and provoked from every direction. Industry rivals, social media trolls, and Durk's relentless fanbase. And right beside him, Lil Tim, the man whose trigger pull started it all. Two outsiders, that looks like loyalty, but for someone like YB, whose entire career and identity are built on dominance, control, and fear, loyalty can start to look like liability real quick. Then came the slap. It wasn't a fight. There wasn't yelling, pushing, or chaos. It was one clean, cold movement, quiet, controlled, and deliberate. The reason people believe the video is real isn't because of the camera angle. It's because of YB's demeanor. The way he stood there, calm as ice, like a general correcting a soldier. No words, no explanation, just that one gesture that screamed, "Don't forget who's feeding you." Immediately, fans started pulling up old clips of YoungBoy talking about jail, loyalty, and betrayal. Those old E-Class live streams, where he'd say things like he couldn't trust nobody, or how the streets will always test your loyalty. And that's the contradiction that defines him. A man who preaches solitude, but surrounds himself with soldiers. He'll say he doesn't care about the industry, but every time he drops, the entire industry shakes. He'll claim he's done with beef, and then drop a bar that sounds like it was dipped in gasoline. So if the footage really was him smacking Lil Tim, it wasn't just anger, it was strategy. It was YoungBoy drawing a line in the sand. Because maybe back in 2020, he needed Lil Tim to make a statement. But in 2025, it's the other way around. Now Lil Tim needs him just to stay relevant and protected. Back in his Vlad TV interview, Lil Tim talked about his first conversation with YB after bonding out of jail. That call was full of mutual respect, gratitude, brotherhood. Interview.
And he was just saying like the same thing everybody else saying, like, don't worry about it. What the industry's saying, bro, you ain't did nothing wrong.
But years later, that dynamic shifted. YB isn't the same kid fighting for validation. He's a kingpin sitting atop an empire built on pain, paranoia, and loss. And deep down, everybody watching knows one cold truth. When you build your throne on violence, it's only a matter of time before that same violence comes back for you. That smack moment might have looked like just another viral clip to casual fans, another rapper meltdown for the timeline. But to people who've been following this story since King Von took his last breath, through the 3860 tape, through every subliminal post and interview, this didn't look random at all. It looked like a message. Because in NBA YoungBoy's world, every move, every glare, every pause is part of a hierarchy. And in that hierarchy, survival depends on power. This isn't the same YB from the 38 Baby days. That wild teenager with a chip on his shoulder and nothing to lose. This is a man who's been to jail, seen betrayal, buried friends, and learned that being feared lasts longer than being loved. And right now, after years of being painted as the villain of hip-hop, YoungBoy's embracing that title. He's no longer running from it. He's weaponizing it. To the streets, that slap looked like disrespect. But to him, it was discipline. And that's exactly why this clip hit harder than any diss track. Because if the same man who stood by you when the world called you a murderer, the same man who made you famous for pulling the trigger, just checked you in public, that means one thing. Something big is coming. When loyalty starts to crack, the streets start whispering, and the internet turns those whispers into wildfire. Within hours of the video dropping, TikTok, X, and YouTube were flooded with theories and slow-motion breakdowns. Creators zoomed in, frame by frame, analyzing every flick of YB's wrist like it was the Zapruder film. Screenshots, red circles, freeze frames. Everybody was looking for the truth. But beneath all that noise was the question nobody wanted to say out loud. Did NBA YoungBoy just check his own shooter? Because if that's true, it changes everything. See, for years, Lil Tim wasn't just another name. He was a symbol. The loyal soldier who took the fall so YoungBoy's empire could stay standing. The man who ate charges, ducked death, and carried the weight of King Von's death on his shoulders. He was the living reminder that YB's team moves different. That when it's war, they don't fold. But when the boss slaps the soldier, even symbolically, it means the loyalty line just got redrawn. And that's something no street crew takes lightly. To really understand how deep this runs, you gotta rewind the story. After King Von's death, Lil Tim wasn't just hiding. He was healing, physically and mentally. He'd been shot twice, interrogated by police, and thrown into one of the most controversial legal battles in rap history. For months, he sat in limbo, a man both protected and hated, celebrated and condemned. Quando Rondo publicly called him a hero, while Dirk's side saw him as a villain who'd never be forgiven. Every move he made since then was watched, judged, and picked apart. So when that footage of YB allegedly checking him mid-performance hit the timeline, it wasn't just drama, it was symbolism. It was YB reminding everyone, fans, enemies, and his own people, that there's only one general in this war. Because in a world where loyalty used to mean protection, it now means obedience. And in YB's kingdom, even the shooter answers to the king. When Lil Tim finally got out on bond, Quando Rondo and NBA YoungBoy became his shields, musically, financially, and publicly. They kept him close, kept him fed, and kept him relevant. In Vlad TV's interview, Tim explained what it meant to have his name immortalized in music, to go from being another street soldier to becoming a symbol.
I look at it like some folks giving me my flowers or some folks showing respect.
That word respect meant everything to him. It was the only thing separating a street legend from a statistic. But now, after this viral smack clip, that same respect he thought he earned looked like it just got revoked in front of millions. And if we're keeping it real, the tension had been bubbling long before that footage ever dropped. Even before this moment, people in the industry were whispering that YB had been pulling back from the 3860 project. According to Tim himself, it wasn't YoungBoy pushing for that release. It was Quando Rondo.
Yeah, it's like he ain't want to just say I don't know like 100% everything, but I know he wasn't saying like he didn't want to just drop the tape like I don't want to drop this with you. He was saying like let's wait.
That might sound small, but in rap politics, hesitation means suspicion. When one of the most feared rappers in the game suddenly slows down on the smoke he once embraced, people start asking questions. Some fans believe YB didn't want to fully reignite the Von beef, not because he was scared, but because it was bad for business. This wasn't 2020 anymore. The whole world was watching now. The feds, the labels, and the media had their eyes on every post, every lyric, every time someone went live. At that level, a single bar could become evidence. Even a 100K track, King Von's former manager, said after YB dropped Bring the Hook that the culture was losing its soul. And when you look at how much blood has been spilled and how much money's been made off that blood, that statement hits different. But let's bring it back to YB himself. Because if there's one thing he values more than fame, it's control. You can see it in how he moves. The way he looks straight into the camera like he's daring the world to blink first. When he posts, "I'm dropping a tape at 12," you feel the confidence, the authority. It's not a suggestion, it's a command. He's built an entire empire off two currencies, fear and respect, the same two things that rappers either die for or lose trying to keep. So if that clip really shows him putting hands on Lil Tim, even if it was light, it probably wasn't anger. It was business. It was YB reminding everyone in his circle, even the man who once saved the crew, that nobody is untouchable. And that's why the internet went nuclear. The reactions split the culture clean in half. Half of social media said YB went too far. They called it a betrayal, that you never disrespect the man who literally took a bullet for you, the one who carried your name through the fire when everyone else stayed quiet. But the other half? They said it was long overdue, that YB had been carrying too much dead weight, that the loyalty he once rewarded was now holding him back. In their eyes, that slap wasn't about hate, it was symbolic power. The same kind of message bosses send when they need to remind the room who's really running the table. Whether you see it as disrespect or discipline depends on how you view YoungBoy. Is he losing control of his empire, or just tightening his grip on it? Some fans are calling it a power reset. They're saying NBA YoungBoy finally did what every boss eventually has to do: cut off the weak links before they drag the whole empire down. Because here's the truth. The same street code that made Lil Tim valuable also made him dangerous. You can't control a man who's already proven he'll shoot first and think later. You can't cage someone who's already looked death in the face and didn't blink. And YoungBoy, he's seen enough betrayal to know how fast loyalty can turn into leverage. He's been burned by people who smiled in his face one day and flipped on him the next. So when that viral clip hit, a lot of folks didn't see it as disrespect. They saw it as YB re-establishing dominance before his own circle started testing boundaries. Meanwhile, there's one name sitting right in the middle of this whole mess: Quando Rondo. He's the bridge between both men, YB's protege and Tim's brother-in-arms. And that's not an easy position when two of the most controversial figures in hip-hop history might be on opposite sides of a power struggle. Fans noticed something right away. Quando went silent. No posts defending Tim, no interviews denying the footage, just straight silence. And in this game, silence can mean a lot. Sometimes it means fear, sometimes it means strategy, and sometimes it means the truth's too messy to clean up. People close to the situation say the fallout actually started long before that clip surfaced. After the release of 3860, the tour that was supposed to reunite YB, Quando, and Lil Tim never happened. Promoters whispered about scheduling issues, but insiders claimed there was real tension behind the scenes, money disagreements, creative control, and the constant fear that every public appearance could explode into violence.
Well, Quando Rondo and NBA YoungBoy actually announced a tour. First stop was supposed to be Chicago, but ultimately that tour.
And when the interviewer pressed Lil Tim on whether that tension was just trolling or something deeper, he didn't dodge the question. He chose his words carefully.
I believe it really supposed to be on tour, but I know I was on house arrest, so I was like, damn, I know I'm probably not gonna be able to go.
That single line, "I probably wasn't gonna be able to go," might have been the quiet breaking point. Because in this business, when money's on the line and somebody can't move, everything starts to crumble. Tours get cancelled, deals fall apart, and the bonds that once looked unbreakable start to fracture under pressure. If YoungBoy really did deliver that slap as a symbolic message, it wasn't just aimed at Lil Tim. It was aimed at everyone in his orbit. A warning shot to remind them that YB runs his camp like a kingdom. Loyalty is rewarded, but hesitation gets punished. And in an industry built on ego, violence, and perception, that's how power survives. Not through friendship, but through fear and control. That's when everything started to shift. The bond that once looked unbreakable, the brotherhood, the loyalty, the ride or die code, started turning into something colder, something more calculated. YB wasn't thinking about family anymore. He was thinking about liability, optics, and profit. By early 2025, NBA YoungBoy's career was cleaner than it had been in years, at least on paper. The legal cases were cooling off. The feds weren't breathing down his neck like before. His label had him back on streaming platforms. His catalog was racking up millions of plays, and YouTube still treated him like royalty. He was a walking contradiction, the most controversial rapper alive, yet one of the few who could still pull family-friendly numbers on major platforms. But while YB was polishing his public image, Lil Tim's visibility was fading. No new features, no interviews, no new music, just silence, until this footage. The clip dropped, and overnight, the man everyone had almost forgotten became the center of chaos again. But it wasn't because of a new song or a comeback performance. It was because of a smack. One short, blurry motion that might have said more than 1,000 words. Social media detectives went to work immediately, dissecting every frame like forensic analysts. Some argued it wasn't a slap, just a tap. Maybe even a playful moment between brothers that the internet twisted out of context. But others weren't buying that. They said it looked real, and if you know YB's history, it made sense. Because when NBA YoungBoy feels disrespected, even slightly, he doesn't hesitate to remind people who's in charge. And if you followed him long enough, you know this isn't new behavior. Switching up is his survival instinct. He's cut off blood relatives, close collaborators, childhood friends, anyone he thought could threaten his peace, his bag, or his power. So if Lil Tim stepped out of line, even just a little, no one would be shocked if YB checked him in front of everybody, even if it meant turning a private tension into a public spectacle. The real question now is, what happens next? Because that clip, real or not, might have just sparked the end of an era. Fans noticed something subtle in YB's recent music. His tones shifted. Less talk about the streets, more about detachment, distance, and solitude. Almost like he's tired of cleaning up everyone else's messes. Tired of being the villain for things he didn't even pull the trigger on. And if that smack really was about power, not anger, then it could mark the death of the YB Quando Lil Tim triangle. A dynamic that's defined an entire chapter of modern street rap. Because make no mistake, when a boss checks his shooter in public, he's not just flexing authority, he's announcing a transition. And in hip-hop, transitions never happen quietly. The fans are watching, the blogs are watching, the industry's watching, and somewhere, Lil Durk is probably smirking. Because the one thing he couldn't do from the outside might have just happened from the inside. YB's circle, the same crew that survived indictments, shootouts, and diss tracks, might finally be cracking under its own weight. And it all started with a blur, a shaky phone camera, a crowded studio hallway, a muffled voice yelling something nobody could make out. Then, for just a split second, the frame steadied. You could clearly see NBA YoungBoy standing dead center, eyes locked on Lil Tim, the man the world still calls King Von's killer. And then it happened. One swift motion, fast enough to miss, but clear enough to feel YB's hand flashed across the frame, and the internet froze. Did he really just smack Lil Tim? That single moment turned whispers into headlines, and headlines into questions that no one, not even YB himself, seems ready to answer. The clip barely lasted 3 seconds. Blurry, grainy, distorted. But that was all it took. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Timelines flooded with captions like, "YoungBoy checks his own shooter." Lil Tim gets humbled by his boss. YB just ended his own empire. In a culture already split by loyalty, death, and pride, that tiny piece of footage detonated hip-hop all over again. To casual fans, it looked like nothing more than a shove, maybe even a misunderstanding. But to anyone who knew the history, who'd followed every lyric, every death, every feud, that motion wasn't random. That slap, real or not, was symbolic. It represented a power shift that had been brewing for 5 years. Because this wasn't just NBA YoungBoy checking another rapper. This was YoungBoy checking the man who changed hip-hop history the moment he pulled the trigger outside a hookah lounge in Atlanta. It all goes back to November 6, 2020, the night King Von was killed. That one night didn't just take a life, it split the rap game in two. On one side, Lil Durk and OTF carrying Von's name like a battle flag. On the other, NBA YoungBoy, Quando Rondo, and the man at the center of it all, Lil Tim. And according to Tim himself, that night spiraled out of control faster than anyone could react. Interview, 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 interview. Gunshots tore through the crowd. Off-duty cops returned fire. Chaos swallowed the street in seconds. Lil Tim was hit twice, once in the hip, once clean through his backside.
Well, you pull out and you shoot 4 times.
Yeah, the gun jam.
He somehow survived, bonded out, and walked straight into history, or infamy, depending on who you asked. To some, he was a hero, defending his brother in arms. To others, he was a murderer, a symbol of everything wrong with street rap and gang culture. But one thing everyone agreed on, Lil Tim's name would never escape the shadow of that night. Fast forward to 2022. NBA YoungBoy had just gotten out of jail. Months of isolation, no visitors, no stage lights, no distractions. When he came home, people said he seemed different, sharper, colder, like he'd made peace with his demons by becoming one of them. That was YB in his purest form, calm, cocky, and convinced that fear was the only currency that mattered. His moves became more deliberate, his circle smaller, his eyes meaner. He didn't just want to make music, he wanted to control the narrative. Every diss, every visual, every cryptic post had meaning. Even silence felt strategic. So when fans saw him allegedly raise his hand toward Lil Tim, they didn't see aggression, they saw message delivery. Because in YB's world, nothing happens by accident. If he touched you, looked at you, or spoke your name, it meant something. And this time, it meant power. To YB supporters, it was just another misunderstood moment from an artist the media loves to villainize. To his critics, it was a sign that YoungBoy's paranoia was finally turning inward, that the empire he built on loyalty and fear might be collapsing under the same weight that made it strong. Either way, that 3-second clip, a blur of motion and noise, reignited a story that never really died. The King Von murder, the OTF 3860 feud, the endless cycle of retaliation and pride. It all came roaring back to life with one flick of a wrist. And as the internet replayed it frame by frame, everyone was asking the same question. Did YB just remind the world who's boss? Or did he just remind us that in this game, loyalty always has an expiration date? Half the internet swore it was nothing, just a joke between brothers. The other half swore they saw tension in NBA YoungBoy's stance. Either way, it didn't matter. Because in this game, perception is truth. And in the rap world, even a rumor can end a friendship faster than a bullet. What started as speculation quickly turned into accusations. Bloggers jumped in, claiming YB had grown tired of Lil Tim's name being forever tied to King Von's death. Others whispered that Tim was the one trying to distance himself, maybe plotting to go solo, maybe trying to escape the shadow of that Atlanta night. Some even said it came down to money, that the loyalty checks were coming slower, that the balance of power was shifting. The truth, nobody knows. But in hip-hop, not knowing never stops anyone from talking. Then came the interview that aged like prophecy. 100K track, King Von's former manager, sat down with Vlad TV and broke down the endless cycle of dices, bodies, and revenge that defines modern street rap.
I knew, like, do the same thing, like stay calm and just make sure I get to the hospital.
He was right. Nobody ever wins these wars. They just take turns losing in public. As soon as the so-called slap went viral, the old wounds reopened. OTF and never broke again. Fans flooded social media, turning comment sections into battlefields. Lil Durk's supporters called it poetic justice. They reposted the clip with captions quoting his infamous line, "Your homies die, you'll never slide." To them, this wasn't drama. This was retribution. They saw it as karma finally catching up to the other side. But to those who really understood YoungBoy's mentality, the move made perfect sense. See, YB's never been about peace. He's been about power. He's obsessed with dominance. In music, in his circle, in every room he walks into. Even when he dropped Bring the Hook and dissed King Von posthumously, it wasn't about disrespecting the dead, it was about warning the living. That's how YB communicates. Not through apologies, but through shock value. Statements meant to shake the culture and make everyone uncomfortable. So if that footage really showed what fans think it did, it's not about betrayal, it's about control. Because YB's not just fighting his enemies, he's fighting irrelevance. In a culture that feeds on chaos, the quiet ones get forgotten, and YB refuses to fade. That's the paradox of his fame. He's one of the biggest artists in the world, yet somehow one of the most isolated. People close to him say he barely sleeps. He spends nights pacing, recording, plotting his next move. He's cut off producers mid-project, cancelled entire shows, and disappeared for weeks at a time without warning. Some call it genius, others call it paranoia. Either way, it's what happens when survival becomes your personality. Meanwhile, pride doesn't die quietly, and caught in the middle of it all is Quando Rondo. Once he called both men his brothers, the bridge between YoungBoy and Tim, the peacemaker, the voice of reason in a camp built on conflict. Now he's gone completely silent. No interviews, no tweets, just a string of cryptic posts about fake loyalty and learning who's real. For someone who once preached unity, that silence speaks volumes. It's the sound of a man realizing that brotherhood doesn't exist when power gets involved. Even the tour that was supposed to reunite them, the big comeback, the moment to show the world that never broke again was still solid, quietly fell apart.
Yeah, it's like he ain't want to just say, I don't know like 100% everything, but I know he wasn't saying like he didn't want to just drop the tape, like I don't want to drop this with you. He was saying like, let's wait.
When asked whether the tension was real or just trolling, Tim gave a careful answer.
And he was just saying like the same thing everybody else saying, like, in the air, bro, you ain't did nothing wrong.
The police winning, and the graveyard's winning.
Well, Quando Rondo and NBA YoungBoy actually announced a tour they're supposed to do together, and the first stop was supposed to be Chicago, but ultimately that tour.
I believe it really supposed to be on tour, but I know I was on house arrest, so I was like, damn, I know I'm probably not gonna be able to go.
And maybe that line wasn't just about travel restrictions or label politics. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe even back then, he knew the truth, that he wasn't really part of YB's next chapter. Because make no mistake, this next chapter is different. For YoungBoy, it's not about the streets anymore, it's about legacy. After years of being painted as hip-hop's villain, he's finally decided to own it. He's not trying to fit in with the industry anymore. He's trying to outlast it. He's tired of proving himself to executives who never understood him. Tired of apologizing to fans who love the chaos more than the craft. Now he's doing what he's always done best, standing alone. And if that means turning his back on the same people who once protected him, so be it. Because to YB, loyalty is conditional, and survival isn't shared. There's something almost tragic about it, though. Every empire YoungBoy builds eventually burns from within. The faces change, the names rotate, but the pattern stays the same. Trust, betrayal, silence, domination. He lets people in. They get too close, then something shifts. Pride, paranoia, maybe both. And suddenly, he's rebuilding again. It's the same story, just a different cast. But this time feels heavier. Because if that viral slap was real, if it truly happened the way people think it did, then YoungBoy didn't just check Lil Tim. He checked the foundation of his entire movement. And once a foundation cracks, it never goes back to what it was. The empire still stands, for now, but the silence between its kings speaks louder than any song could. And maybe that's the real story here. The footage itself isn't shocking because of what it shows. It's shocking because of what it confirms. That NBA YoungBoy's greatest enemy has never been Lil Durk, King Von, or even the music industry. It's always been himself. Every slap, every diss, every feud. It's not just about rivals. It's YB fighting the ghost of his own paranoia. The same paranoia that's kept him alive all these years is the same paranoia that's slowly tearing his world apart. That's the paradox of YoungBoy. The brilliance and the burden. He's built an empire on his fear, his mistrust, and his defiance. But in trying to control everything around him, he ends up controlling nothing at all. Because when you spend your whole life on defense, you never stop fighting, even when there's no enemy left but yourself. Now, even surrounded by cameras, money, and millions of fans, YB moves like a man still trapped in survival mode. Suspicious, cold, watching everyone around him like they might be next to switch up. Because once you let someone close, they have the power to hurt you. And that's a risk he's not willing to take. Not anymore. The fans are still debating, arguing over whether that clip was real, staged, or a misunderstanding. But at this point, it doesn't even matter. In hip-hop, perception is reality. Truth is optional. What people believe becomes the story. And right now, the story is that the unbreakable bond between YoungBoy and Lil Tim is broken. Somewhere in Chicago, Lil Durk is probably watching it all unfold, not out of revenge, but out of irony. Because in the end, time did what bullets couldn't. It split the opposition. While everyone else sees drama, Durk sees proof that even the strongest alliances eventually collapse under the weight of ego and fear. As for YB, he'll keep it moving, because that's what he does. He'll record new songs, drop cryptic captions, post new videos, let the world argue while he writes his next verse, watching the chaos from behind his screen. Because that's his true superpower, turning pain into content. He's the rare artist who can weaponize heartbreak, betrayal, and violence into chart-topping records. But no matter how many platinum plaques he earns, no matter how much he evolves musically, he can't outrun that one image, that blurred frame of a hand meeting a face. The spark that reignited 5 years of ghosts, grudges, and guilt. It's more than a viral clip. It's a metaphor for his entire career. Brilliant, brutal, self-destructive, all at once. Because this story isn't just about a slap. It's about what happens when fear becomes the foundation of loyalty and power replaces brotherhood. In YoungBoy's world, respect doesn't come from love. It comes from dominance. Loyalty isn't a bond. It's a contract. And the moment that contract stops serving him, it's torn apart, just like every alliance before it. That's the cycle. That's the curse. And that's why this moment matters. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it predicts. Whether the footage was staged, real, or exaggerated, one thing's certain. It marks the end of an era. The trio that once defined a movement, YoungBoy, Quando Rondo, and Lil Tim, may never share another stage again. And maybe that's exactly how YB wants it, because deep down, he's always believed one thing. There can only be one king. And kings, they don't share thrones. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, go ahead and click one of the cards on your screen for more stories just like this.